We will now continue our meeting for the North Dakota Ethics Commission, and we are at the travel disclosure rules item on the agenda. And Murray or Logan?
I'll take this one, Cindy. So, wait for Addie to get it up. Go to the next slide, Addie. As the commission is aware, but I will give a briefing since we have a new commissioner today. The Ethics Commission has these travel disclosure rules. They have gone through the notice and comment period, so the commission is in the situation where you can finally adopt them if you choose to do so. But they've been discussed at previous meetings going back to June of last year. And there's the dates for when we initiated the adoption process, and we held the hearing on July 10th. Since that time, we've been, I'm not sure if we discussed them, but we've been waiting for new commissioners to come aboard to provide a further discussion on these rules and what the commission would like to do with them. All right, if you can go to the next slide. Murray, I don't know if you want to take over from here, but I know you had some proposals that you want to further amend the rules.
In the yellow, it was my suggestion that the proposed rules be amended to clarify paragraph 6 or section 6 that third-party funded travel means travel whether within or outside the state of North Dakota undertaken by a public official or a member of the public official's immediate family. Previously, or in the draft, it says spouse, and I suggested that immediate family may be a better term because it's defined elsewhere in the rules, and so added a new definition in this rule. I just thought that would be a more descriptive term. Next page. I also suggested that the rule that the disclosure be filed within 15 days of travel, not by the 15th of the succeeding month, and that the travel disclosure statement be expanded somewhat. For example, in subsection E, the traveler or the public official, if the travel's paid by third parties, may not know how much has been expended. So I'm proposing that an estimate of the amount expended, or if known, the actual amount expended, and whether the expenses were for air transportation, ground transportation, lodging, meals, entertainment, or other activities, which could be in the form of a checkbox, and the number of any accompanying immediate family members, if any, and the agenda. So, for example, if the travel is for 5 days and the agenda is for a one-day meeting, that should be disclosed. Next page is, next slide. And that I noticed that in subsection 3 that there was some duplication between 3 and 4, so I'm suggesting that that one sentence be deleted. And that in public access and retention, that the travel disclosure statement shall be made publicly accessible through the Commission's website for 3 years. And the Commission shall note on a travel disclosure statement whether it's been amended or whether the Commission has received the statement after the filing deadline. So these proposed changes so far are relatively minor and more cleanup editing. On the next slide, I'm suggesting clarification of adding the term in paragraph 1 that the commission may charge and collect a late fee from the public official. And again, in paragraph 2, from the public official. And then down in paragraph below, 3, again, from the public official. But the real change I'm proposing is that, consistent with the language in the what I call the frivolous complaint rule, that instead of a $5,000 fee, that there be a $500 fee from the public official. For a second and subsequent violation, the commission may charge up to $1,000 from the public official. And so I'm proposing that the draft rule that was circulated and has been previously discussed be amended with the text in yellow. That's my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion with a second. Discussion.
Start of all of this. Situation and they.
Ron, could you turn on your microphone?
Turn on your mic.
Sorry. That's why I have my secretary. Maybe from our previous discussion, we don't have to worry about that, but I just noticed that. So.
When I conducted the hearing on the travel disclosure rules, Governor Armstrong appeared in person, and he was particularly upset with the $5,000 penalty. I don't know whether $500 would meet his approval or not, but I just proposed 500 and 1,000 to be consistent with what I had proposed earlier in the day.
Sure. I'm sure we'll have further input from other parties on that at some point.
So did I get a second on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the concept, the motion, which is seconded, is to amend the draft that has been circulated.
Commissioners, so there wouldn't necessarily, as Logan referred to earlier, the Administrative Practices Agency Practice Act. Sorry, I still have the federal one in my head all the time. It wouldn't have to go through another round of comment, but as you can see up on the screen, the suggestion would be to circulate an amended version with the proposal that is on the table right now. To public officials, we have the ability to do that with our Gov delivery system and give them another opportunity to submit comment regarding that. We did have other individuals. We had the governor, as you can see in attachment 12. There were several comments on the travel rules that were made during the hearing. One of them was from a representative from a legislator. And so, but we would give them, Murray is proposing, Commissioner Sogsveen is proposing that we do another kind of opportunity for additional comment.
Which I would do in a second motion.
Okay, that's fine.
So the motion on the floor is to adopt the proposed amendments. Am I saying it right?
To the proposed rule.
To the proposed rule. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Sagsveen,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp,
Aye.
Vice Chair Goodman,
Aye.
and Chair Lindquist.
Aye.
I also move that the amended version, the text as amended, be circulated to appropriate public officials uh, uh, for a period of time and be placed on the agenda for consideration of final approval at the December meeting.
Okay, so there's a motion
Second.
and a second. Further questions or discussion?
How long is the comment period?
This comment period's not required by statute, so it's however long you want to make it.
And we would want those comments before our meeting, which is December 17th.
Correct.
And so I would suggest that it be narrow. So I don't, is a week sufficient? I mean,
Well, I was gonna say, do we
have-
want to wait until January because of the Christmas season? But I don't, I guess I don't mind if it's narrow.
Maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. Seems kind of short if someone.
So just looking at the calendar, what we could do is we could send out, because we'll have to prepare a statement and a it will effectively be a news release that will go out to public officials. We could send that as early, I would say, as Friday. That's not being too aggressive or too hopeful. But then we do have the week of Thanksgiving next week. So I would recommend that we will need time to review those and provide, Logan will have to look at those and provide information to the commission. So the latest would be what, the 10th? Yeah, December 10th. Is that plenty of time, or do you want more or less? Essentially giving them 1 to 2.5 weeks with the then inclusion of Thanksgiving in there as well.
I think that's plenty of time, especially for a second.
Yeah.
Release.
And just to be clear, this won't be published the same way that a normal comment period happens. This is just additional notice to be ultra transparent.
Further questions or comments? And staff, you've got the directions then. All right, Ann, you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Sagsveen,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp,
Aye.
Vice Chair Goodman,
Aye.
and Chair Lindquist.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. And I'm not quite sure. Are we now on to item E? We finished?
Yes, I believe at this point we have finished A through D. So we are on E.
Commissioners, if you've got your agendas in that, we are still under item 5, ongoing business, and now we are at item 5E, response to the Office of the Attorney General. And who is taking the lead?
I don't have it.
Yeah, can we just take a break?
All right.
And move on and discuss something else too, Cindy, and print them over lunch.
All right, we need printed copies, which we don't have of the most current version. So we're going to move this item so the staff maybe during the lunch break can make us copies. So then We'll move back up to executive director's report. Business items done?
We can. I can get my stuff out of the way.
Let me pose it to the commissioners. Since we need to table this item on the response to the Attorney General, do we want to move on to item 7 to discuss the process for appointments? Or should we move back up to the business side, the executive director's report? Any,
Got to do that at some point, right? Might as well do it for,
okay. We will then keep following on the agenda, which is numbered 7, which is the update on the process for appointment of commissioners. And there is news.
All right, thanks, Cindy. So the update, some of it is not included in your memo because there was an update this morning. The selection committee did meet while the commission was meeting this morning. As the commission has, the selection committee did conduct interviews with 7 individuals back in October. That happened. I have the list of names for the commission for you to review. After those interviews, the selection committee met several times to appoint 3 individuals to serve on the commission, 1 individual to serve just as a reminder for the commission and the public, 1 individual to serve the remainder of former Chair Anderson's term, and that term runs until August 31st of 2026. 1 individual to fill the vacancy left by Commissioner Kozer's retirement, which we now have Pam in that position, Commissioner Sharp, and 1 individual to fill the vacancy created by the end of Commissioner Sogsveen term. As the commission has done in the past, the commission did request that Commissioner Sogsveen be reappointed. As discussed earlier, Commissioner Sharp has been appointed by consensus agreement by the selection committee. That happened on October 31st of this year. It also then, during the selection committee meetings, it appears that there is a stalemate on filling the other positions. That is what the update was as of this morning. But I did receive a message from the governor's office a moment ago or a few minutes ago, and I will read it so that I do not incorrectly state it, that Attorney Mark Western out of Fargo, I believe, was appointed by consensus to fill the remainder of Dave Anderson's term as of this morning. And that appointment was effective immediately. So we will take care of that. You will also find in the materials for the commission today, there is a memorandum from Commissioner Sogsveen about the appointment process and what has happened thus far. So that was the update as of when the memo went out, and then with the update from this morning. Is there anything that anybody wants to add to that? Yeah.
So we've heard a few different reports of the conversation regarding Commissioner Sogsveen's position on the commission or his successor if one is named. We've been told that there's going to be a letter coming from the governor's office that he believes that Commissioner Sogsveen cannot continue in his position on the commission. I think I'll leave it at that because we have not received any such letter and I have not had an opportunity to review it as the commission's legal counsel. So when and if we need the commission to provide more input on something like that, we'll coordinate with the chair if we need a special meeting or et cetera. There.
And just to clarify, that is something that we've heard. That did not come from the governor's office. The governor's office hasn't indicated that. So, but it was a public meeting and there were several individuals who were listening and have asked us about that particular question. So
I will acknowledge that when we took a break, I was approached by a reporter, and I forget which entity he was with. And his first question to me was that very point. And I'm like, news to me, I didn't know, I didn't hear, and I did respond, no comment. since we're talking about this, I'm going to bring up Commissioner Sagsveen's request for our legal counsel to provide guidance on the appointment, and I would like us to have that discussion. And I'm not, yeah. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Murray, at all, but a formal request was made relative to the legality of this, and we asked our legal counsel, Logan Carpenter, to please provide that for us.
Sure, Cindy, I can take it from there. I did do that analysis. I interpreted the request as a commissioner in his official capacity, asking whether he can continue and come to the commission's meeting today. So I provided that memo to him and the chair on Monday. I also, pursuant to my SAG agreement, provided it to the Attorney General's office. I have received a communication that they disagree with my analysis, which is their right to disagree with me, but I have not had an opportunity to respond or communicate further with their office given our meeting today. I will have a chance to do so sometime this week, hopefully. But there is a memo from myself as legal counsel to Commissioner Sagsveen regarding that very question. And I will provide that to the other two commissioners who did not receive it.
I think for the benefit of the other commissioners, but also because we are a public entity and our meetings are always public. And since I have made that request, Logan, I would really appreciate it if you could, in kind of maybe non-legal, just the memo was very well written. And I get and understand legal.
Sure.
And that, but also for me as a non-lawyer, my understanding is that this has been the general practice
Sure.
across the state in that, but you articulated so well, but if you could just maybe explain a little bit more.
Sure. So in the Constitution, it says that commissioners serve 4-year terms. And for some public officials, the governor is a good example. The governor's provision of the Constitution designates that the governor continues to serve until a successor is elected and qualified. That's known as a holdover provision. There isn't one explicitly in Article 14 regarding the commission. So my analysis focuses on, well, what do we do when the Constitution is silent on that issue? So I look for North Dakota precedent. There's some old cases from the North Dakota Supreme Court that address the issue. There's a couple of justices who, separate from the court's opinions in those cases, they analyze that very issue. There's also what's known as the common law across the United States. What's the general practice? What's the general tradition of the states and their legal precedent when it comes to these issues? And the majority rule in those instances, according to the legal encyclopedias that are regularly consulted by attorneys, is that when something is silent, a public official will continue to hold over and continue in that position until a successor is qualified and appointed, or if they're elected. Now, that doesn't mean that the successor, that doesn't mean that the term is extended. It just shortens the tenure of the successor. So the terms are still the same. It's just that the successor, whenever they fill that position, their term still runs from when they're appointed to when that term concludes.
And I think I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to just reiterate from my perspective that the North Dakota Ethics Commission has understood that, and it's always been by mutual agreement how we've have functioned. We've always reiterated that. We've had little turnover, and more recently we've had bigger turnover, unfortunately, in that, but that's always our understanding of how we would function and operate as a new body, that a sitting commissioner stays on until replacement has been named.
I just was going to follow that up with a bit of a practical information. So thank you, Logan, for providing that. But I had a opportunity to chat with our previous chair, Paul Richard. He would certainly be here today and talk to you guys if we let him or wanted him to. But he did give me a call to talk about how this was a question that was addressed early on in the commission. It had come up, and at the time, back in, it was maybe 2019, he referenced it was when the first commissioner rolled over. So I believe that would have been in 21. That there was this question was asked of the then council at the time, and the same advice that Logan just discussed was articulated at that time. So just for the commission's kind of historical perspective, Paul had reached out to me, and I obviously was not there at that time, and so he wanted to make sure that we were aware of that.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, just historically too, when my term was up, I don't know about you, Cindy, but when my term was up, I did not apply. I just assumed I'd be appointed. And we went through some, I won't say trauma, because basically, were you the executive director at that time?
Yes, Ron, I was. I believe that prior to you and Cindy being reappointed, when Paul and Dave were initially reappointed, they did not reapply. They didn't make a call for applicants.
Right.
They just reappointed. But then with discussions between the then governor and the Senate Majority Leader and Senate Minority, we all kind of reached an agreement that it would be a better practice to have that opened up and have that reapplication happen. And then that's been the practice since, I believe you and Cindy were reappointed in 2023.
Did you reapply?
Yes.
Okay, and I didn't. And so they said, well, Commissioner Goodman didn't reapply. We're not going to, we won't consider him. That's how it started. And then I said, no, the practice has been, and we went from there. So anyway, so I just about got the boot, but
Ron, if I remember correctly, you did reapply then.
yes.
And then you were reappointed.
Yes.
Maybe just publicly stating too that that process has changed also. So there's a public call for North Dakota citizens to apply to be a member of the Ethics Commission. And this, my understanding, because I never had to answer questions. I mean, they interviewed me for my reappointment, the 3 people in that, but I never had to sit down and answer 8 questions in writing. And I don't know, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. And that's, so the process itself with that selection body has also changed or adapted since our beginning. Okay, we can move on. We'll take up item 8, discussion of Secretary of State's request for AG opinion. And Rebecca, I think you could lead us, please.
Yep, I can. I just want to get the attachment number here for everybody. So we are on item number 8 of the agenda, but we are specifically looking at attachment 21. You'll also want to refer to attachment 20, which was Commissioner Lindquist's letter to the Secretary of State making an open records request based on a comment made during a podcast by the Attorney General. Based upon that comment, we were unsure of whether there was a reference, a passing reference to an AG opinion regarding the Secretary of State and the Commission's rules. So if you will look at the dates, the initial podcast happened on August 13th. a few months later, obviously we didn't listen to the podcast when it happened, but later in time. But based on the comment that did happen on October 13th, Chair Lindquist made an open records request for any communication related to an Attorney General opinion request by the Secretary of State. So in response, the Secretary of State provided Chair Lindquist with a letter that was dated July 22nd that had been or is addressed to the Attorney General and is a request for an Attorney General opinion. So in the initial letter, if you have reviewed it, which I'm assuming all of you have, it does have 2 questions on the second page, although there is some potentially other questions. So I have that the opinion is regarding 2, but potentially 4 questions, because there are other questions that are kind of set up in the introductory paragraph. And I have that the questions being asked specifically on page 2 is 1, were the advisory opinions issued, or the advisory opinion issued 2501, which was issued by the commission on June 25th of this year, was it in compliance with the advisory opinion statute? And if the opinions are outside the scope of authority or differ from our legal interpretation of the statute referring to the Secretary of State's office, what happens to the immunity that is granted in the advisory opinion statute? The second question posed is, if the North Dakota Ethics Commission seeks to promulgate ethics rules through a rules process in an attempt to further narrow, expand, or contradict requirements already in statute, what legal obligations would the Office of the Secretary of State have to follow them? Concerns include potential conflicts with current statutes and the cost of implementing administrative or programming changes. When such changes go through the legislative process, there is an opportunity for discussion on impacts and costs, which can be considered and addressed by the Assembly. This is far more limited in an administrative rulemaking process. So in the request, the Secretary of State is also directly asking, and it's not posed as one of the 2 questions on the second page, but is asking whether caregiver and security expenses are considered acceptable expenditures under campaign finance statutes. This is the question that was answered, asked of the Commission, and then answered by the Commission in Advisory Opinion 2501. Just as you can see from the timeline, the Commission was not made aware of the request for an Attorney General opinion by either of the Office of the Attorney General or the Secretary of State's office until October of this year. So the request may opine, as General Counsel Carpenter alluded to earlier, the opinion that will come out very well could opine on the broad scope of authority of the Commission and affect that question that you had, Commissioner Goodman, about the scope or authority that the Commission has in that rulemaking process. So that is what I have to present. You have the attachments, you have the open records request to the Secretary of State, you have the AG opinion request from the Secretary of State, and then you also have the advisory opinion that the Commission issued pursuant to 546604.2. Just to refresh the Commission's maybe memory on advisory opinion 2501 that was requested by Senator Boucher, and it was done during legislative session. We did end up working out an agreement with Senator Boucher to wait on that request because the change in law, there were some legislative pieces that were working through the process that could impact the opinion. And so this was an opinion that the Commission discussed at a meeting or multiple meetings before it was issued, and whether we walked through the statute to see whether the Commission should issue the opinion. And it did move forward with issuing it. So Cindy, it's interesting. This is the one that this particular opinion, Dave and I at the time said, let's take it to the whole Commission to make that decision about whether they should issue that. So we did go outside and get extra consultation in that request. And so that is what I have for the commission today. On that, what we have learned, the potential impact of any advisory opinion that comes from the Attorney General, the commission will have to evaluate that. One thing that the commission may want to consider is having our general counsel conduct an analysis of the questions presented in the Secretary of State's request. And then they could consider potential action or see what happens at the December or potentially January or further meetings. But that is all I have at this time. Any questions, concerns, comments?
I guess I'm not sure what we should do. And is there, or are there options besides directing Logan to do our own analysis? I'm also, well, I don't know. Commissioners, help me.
So I will add, Cindy, to answer your question that I think you somewhat just asked is what should the commission do? At this point, the Attorney General opinion has not been issued. It is pending before the Attorney General's office, but the opinion has not come out, so we don't know what it is going to say. There are some maybe clues in the letter that the Secretary of State said or had, and as well as the podcast, if you listen to the context. But I'm at this point in time, I guess my recommendation is not to take any official action unless you feel otherwise, but just for us to have a sense of the questions and have some legal reasoning or at least analysis independent at this point.
I read the Secretary of State's letter many, many times, and he asked many questions, and surprising questions too. As you know, can the Secretary of State apparently ignore something that the Ethics Commission has done? I would greatly appreciate our general counsel's comments on each of those questions that have been identified. And it's entirely possible that if the Attorney General does issue an opinion, there may be a disagreement about them, which creates other issues relating to the independence of our general counsel. I think we should have an independent analysis of those questions. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, I guess I'm in agreement that, yeah, I think we need to have our own legal counsel do that analysis, but I'm going to state this, that I'm concerned that we weren't invited in. We weren't told, advised by either the Secretary of State's office or the AG's office that this request was made way back in July. And then we happened to find out about it on a podcast, which prompted me and Rebecca, with Rebecca's help, to make the formal request for whatever documents. So then it came to light. And we have been trying to get an in-person meeting with the AG's office since May, June, for a while now, to talk about the relationship between the commission and the AG's office. I thought we had a great relationship with the Secretary of State's office until I saw this. And I'm like, oh, wait. So, because I thought we were communicating, we were meeting, visiting, having discussions, and that, and I'm very concerned because the Ethics Commission was established by the people after many attempts. And I don't take my responsibility serving on this commission lightly. And I am a non-lawyer, but I'm fairly intelligent and that. And in North Dakota, you know, we always say we're small, we're nice. And I'm confounded that how come we can't sit down and get together and talk this out and come to common ground about the role of the commission and this work. And now it seems we're at a juncture where we're at odds, and we should not be. And I'm still trying to figure out, how do we get to the table? Well, I don't know. Is there a table anymore? And there's all these other things, these other threads feed into this also, into who we are as a body, and doing our very, very best with limited resources, because our staff are they're stretched so thin right now, not just with the caseload, but with what all these things that we're dealing with and handling and that. And I'm saying this on the record because these are hard issues, and yet the Ethics Commission, I believe, we're trying to do our job and to do it in a good way, a responsible way. And hopefully with the guidance from the AG's office, the Secretary of State's office, the governor's office, and legislative body, besides the public. You know, what is this? What is this commission supposed to be doing? How is it supposed to be doing it? Well, all along, transparency, accountability, making sure checks and balances are in place, those guardrails are in place. And if they're not, for those things that we have the governance over, then this is kind of where we're at in our brief 5-6 years of existence. Okay, so we're putting up some guardrails, some checks and balances, but hopefully again in a good way and with cooperation. So I'm deeply upset of how we found out. I'm deeply upset by the politicization on social media of this work, and we should know better. And I truly believe we, the commission, our staff, have been working hard to know better, to act better, to act professional, and that. And all our work is public. These records, all this, people, you can look at it and draw your own opinion in that. And yet, how do we mend this? How do we find the common ground toward having an ethics commission in North Dakota? And I'm a little bit scared because of other things. And that is, it's like, what's going on here and why? But I am a native North Dakotan, and most of you know who I am. I am both Dakota and I'm Scandinavian. And both my background, my Scandinavian relatives, my Dakota relatives, I'm sorry. You want a good fight? I'm going to have a good fight. But hopefully I mean that in a good way. There's differences here, but there's also commonality and common sense, and it needs to prevail. And that's what I truly believe we, the commission, are trying to do. And I don't mean to digress, but I just have to say what I'm saying because I am the chair. And I take this responsibility seriously and ethically. And I'm trying to do my best as the chair, as are my colleagues. And Commissioner Pam, I'm so sorry. You kind of got thrown into the fire, but we welcome you because we need diversity of opinion. We need experience in history as our staff, as our colleagues. How did we get here? And where are we going? And hopefully we are going forward in a good way. And we're going to fulfill our mission because the people have asked us to do this. And so we will do what we need to do. Thank you for listening to me. And I don't know where we're at in the agenda. Have we finished this topic, which is the discussion of the Secretary of State's request for an AG opinion? And there's no action until we get, if the AG's office is going to release, because right, we know something's pending, but Mr. Sagsveen?
I move to request our general counsel to provide an analysis of each of the questions raised in the letter from the Secretary of State for the reasons that will be discussed later in the meeting.
We have a motion on the floor
Second.
and a second. Further comments or questions?
Can I add, Cindy, not necessarily to your, but you talked about communications and you talked about collaboration. And I want to just bring the commission's attention to the second question that is posed in the Secretary of State's letter asking for an AG opinion, talks about Ethics Commission promulgation of ethics rules and what happens when they narrow, expand, or contradict requirements. This was a discussion that Commissioner Sagsveen, myself, and General Counsel Carpenter had with the Secretary of State. We requested meeting with them. We sat down and had a meeting regarding potentially working with their office to have the commission adopt. I think at that point we were talking about campaign expenditure reporting, but we did sit down and have a meeting with them, and that we threw around the idea for the purpose of discussion. And we did have a discussion that day about ethics rules relating to campaign finance expenditure disclosures reporting. That is not something new. The commission had talked about discussing campaign disclosure requirements after the midterm elections, the last midterm elections in North Dakota. We were in the Capitol, all of the commissioners were here. I remember specifically sitting beside Dave Anderson at the time, and we had that same discussion about campaign disclosures in our state and what role the Ethics Commission had in that. At that point, the commission directed staff to look into whether that is something the commission should do. And at that point, we knew that there was several pieces of legislation that might be put forward. And so we kind of held. We kind of paused and held on that to see what happened during legislative session. We did monitor those bills. We didn't testify or provide anything on those, but we did monitor those bills closely. So I do want to articulate that this particular question, I believe, originated from that discussion that we had, which was a good discussion to have. I didn't quite anticipate the effect that it would have, but we have to be able to have discussions and run ideas and collaborate. And so just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. I appreciate that reminder of that because I know you have told us about that also, but it's good to both remind us, but then to make sure it's also officially on this record of our work and that. Any other comments? Call for the vote.
Commissioner Sagsby,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp,
Aye.
Vice Chair Goodman,
Aye.
and Chair Lindquist.
Aye. The other comment I want to make relative to this topic is, I'm not sure that all the commissioners are aware, but our staff have been getting many requests for media and comments, appearing on podcasts and that. And so as your chair, I want to direct Rebecca and our staff to respond in a good way, but also
I like
do
that
good-
direction. Respond in a positive way. Always.
and with our facts, with our information, because there has been a lot of misinformation documented, reported more recently. Again, it's like, check your facts. Check, I mean, and it's there in that. And so there was a specific request just a couple of days ago, I believe, to appear on a podcast. And so I think Rebecca should speak for us and to accept those things, particularly on more on the social media side and that, but to make sure, if you're not aware, we do respond on our webpage, which links to our Facebook piece and that, but we're not quite sure, especially on the public side, if they see all that, if they go there and that, whatever. And sometimes people just either hear the news or listen to a podcast or whatever, and then that's it and whatever. But at your discretion, Rebecca, as our executive director, please start speaking on our behalf and with our facts. Any other comments? All right. So we have completed items 7 and 8. So we're going to go back up to executive director's report, but it is 11:40. I'm going to suggest we take our lunch break now and recess until 12:30. Not quite an hour. I'm still hopeful that maybe I can get on the road by 4, if not a little earlier. But if there's no objections, I'm going to recess us for our lunch break at 11:40, which is the current time, and we will reconvene at 12:30. Thank you. All right, welcome back to the afternoon version or session of the North Dakota Ethics Commission. And we still have several or many things on our agenda. I'm going to ask the commission if we can go back to, since staff have now distributed a final draft of the complaint rule process, if we could discuss that and whether or not we want to adopt this draft.
I move that the commission adopt the version of the complaint process rules dated November 19, 2025.
We have a motion and a second. Further questions or discussion? Hearing none?
Oh, I will just add, I mean, I have not read every word of this whole thing, so I feel like I'm kind of at a disadvantage for, trusting. Can we wait till next month so I can read through this and be?
Yes, we can do that. And we also need to just reflect on the record that we considered all the comments, both the oral comments and the written comments, which were included with your meeting materials. There's a memo from me that summarizes the oral comments. They didn't really relate to the proposed amendments, so that's very brief, but just for the commission's knowledge when you do choose to move these to final adoption, whether that's now or at a subsequent meeting.
Okay, I withdraw my motion.
A motion has been withdrawn. And so we need a motion to table. Or
We can, we,
Or
you
this-
wouldn't need to,
Yeah,
but we
'cause
can.
it's
I think it would
ongoing
be good.
business.
It's ongoing business.
Yeah.
If you want to specifically discuss it in December, you may want to do a motion, but it is ongoing business.
Okay, so noted. This will be noted on the December agenda under ongoing business. And
Just a
thank you, Pam, also for, yeah, it's like I should have recognized that myself. I was like, oh, wait a minute, she might need more time to really read this and digest it all. And as I do.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Logan just to give the commission the logistical overview of adopting this in December. When will they be effective?
So if you adopted them today or in December, they're both, either one, they're effective April 1st, according to the Century Code statute regarding effective date of rules.
Okay. Moving on, we will go down to item 8 on our agenda, discussion of, oh no. Yeah, discussion, no, we did that.
We're on.
Okay. Looking at my notes incorrectly. We're still under ongoing business and we're going to go to item E, response to the Office of the Attorney General. And Addie has prepared or provided us with paper or written copies. But who's going to lead this?
I can give an introduction.
Okay.
I'll provide the commission just with an overview of how we got to the report, which is actually outlined in, I don't know if I want to call it a report, a memo, I think is probably a better definition, a response. But Commissioner Lindquist, Chair Lindquist, had requested a meeting with the Office of the Attorney General, specifically for the purpose of developing and establishing a productive professional relationship. And in response to that request, what the letter that Commissioner Lindquist received back was requesting a response to various correspondence that we received from the Office of the Attorney General over the past, I want to say months, but I think it's much longer than months. And so at the August meeting, you can go into more detail, Cindy. I'll allow. You can do whatever. I'm not the chair. You're the chair. Anyway, but Commissioner Sogsveen was directed to provide a response. There is some procedural things that happened in the interim. Commissioner Goodman, as well as myself, met with the Office of Human Resources, HRMS, to really get their advice on how to handle this situation and how to move forward in a positive way to create a positive relationship. And so I will hand it over to Chair Lindquist to talk a little bit more about what happened and how we got where we are.
Trying to keep everything chronologically relevant or in my, at least in my head, and as I try to recall how we got to where we are. And there is a paper trail relative to most all that we are talking about. And for me, the crux of where we're at and having a written response stems from our inquiry into meeting with the AG's office in a good way as things started popping up about our relationship and their interpretation, our interpretation, etc. But what I want to do, I'm going to read the letter directed to me dated August 7, 2025. And this letter is from Drew Wrigley, Attorney General of North Dakota. And I'm going to just read the one paragraph that I think is relevant to why this is on our agenda and why we have now, in fact, drafted a written response. And it says, when the Ethics Commission substantively responds to the concerns detailed in the correspondence noted above, including the multiple attachments to the February 19th letter, this office will then welcome the opportunity to schedule a meeting with you to discuss the substantive issues we have raised repeatedly with the Ethics Commission and staff, in which are now matters of broad concern among an array of officials, state employees, and other stakeholders. So when we discuss this, and anytime the commission gets an official, and for me, not just even an official inquiry, any kind of correspondence, whatever from anybody, it's duly noted and documented and recorded that it's been received. So there's that paper trail in that. And so there were various documents and inquiries from the AG's office and staff starting in the spring till August 7th when I got this letter, when we had been trying to schedule an in-person meeting and that. And so we, the commission, had been having discussions, and should we respond to each individual thing? And there was an agreement among us that no, we didn't want to continue, from my perspective, the politics of it and what was happening in each of the cases or each of the letters or inquiries or requests on that. And we didn't want to, I feel, we did not want to be part of politicization and the denigration of our staff. And we were trying in a good way, to the best of our ability, to get people to the table. Hey, we're adults, we're professionals. We have this responsibility to the constituents, the citizens of North Dakota, to do this in a good way as best we can. So when I got this one, I'm like, okay. And so as the commission discussed this in these pieces over those months, at this juncture, we're like, okay, we need to put it in writing. We need to respond. And whether or not we respond to each piece remains to be seen. But Commissioner Sagsveen volunteered with our agreement to draft a response to the AG's inquiry or request and letter. And then a few other things happened along the way. So it's, even though I kind of have a chronology, it gets intermixed in that. So this is where we're at. And what we're presenting now is a draft of a response based on our facts, on our understanding at moments in time, including legal opinion from our staff about these things, these questions, these issues, and that. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Sagsveen if he will kind of walk us through what we're looking at in this draft response to the AG.
What I suggest that we do is just look at the table of contents, and that might be a way to work through this. There are a lot of terms in this document, and so I decided to have definitions so that to help the reader. I had a very brief executive summary and an introduction of how we got here. And as I began reviewing the documents that the Attorney General wanted a response to, I had an epiphany that the real issue here is the conflict of interest that the Attorney General has with the Ethics Commission. The basic conflict of interest is that the Attorney General is a public official and is subject to the Ethics Commission. So that's a basic issue. But then I went through a number of separate issues that are outlined in the table of contents. And beginning under Roman numeral V, unsupported allegations of inappropriate legal advice. And this is a situation, as you all may recall, except for Commissioner Sharp, that one of the issues of the Ethics Commission is to provide education to regulated individuals, public officials, and Executive Director Benstock and General Counsel Carpenter proceeded on an ethics program, and they were informed that by the Attorney General that they were in effect acting inappropriately, which is explained in the document. And a request was made to the State Bar Association for clarification. The State Bar Association said, no, you're acting appropriately. And also it's in the position description and requirements for the executive director to proceed. So in a way, the Attorney General, as the statutory attorney for the Ethics Commission, was in effect frustrating the work of the Commission on Education, which I explained it, which is explained in these documents. Second, there was the in the published report concerning one of the complaints that was resolved, that was taken to conclusion. There was a statements in the executive director's report or final report that the Attorney General, as the attorney, statutory attorney for the Ethics Commission, was not was in effect resisting investigations that were committed by the Ethics Commission, and that led to a report that was submitted to the Legislative Audit and Fiscal Review Committee. And again, during the hearing or meeting with the Legislative Audit and Fiscal Review Committee, the Attorney General not only disagreed with the report, but also essentially attacked the executive director for her work in preparing the report. Again, that's in the documents. Public adversarial comments. The Attorney General, as the statutory attorney for the Ethics Commission, has made a number of public or adversarial comments in public concerning his client, the Commission. And continuing on, where the Secretary of State requests an Attorney General opinion, here you have a situation where the Secretary of State has requested an opinion about the jurisdiction and authority of the Ethics Commission, and the request is from the Secretary of State, and the Ethics Commission's attorney is now going to opine about the authority and jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission without consulting or even notifying the Ethics Commission that was taking place. And subsection E is the Office of the Attorney General opposing legislation recommended by the Ethics Commission, House Bill 1360, and in effect the Office of the Attorney General working to oppose the legislation, and ultimately it was killed. So all of that is in that memorandum. I've tried my best to be very factual about it and not try to interpret it or bias it one way or the other. And for that reason, I've attached documents that would support everything that I've written in this report. And I've came to the conclusion on the last page that page 39, I didn't intend it to be 39 pages when I started, but on page 39, I'm suggesting that the commission consider these actions. Communicate to the Attorney General, this is the response he requested, and to notify the Attorney General that when he is willing to treat the commission and its staff with professionalism and respect, the commission is open to cordial conversations on any remaining substantive issues. To formally request Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General to refrain from further unprofessional, demeaning, and derogatory comments concerning Executive Director Binstock and General Counsel Carpenter. And through number 3, to notify the Attorney General as contemplated by the legislature and directed in section 546614 of the Century Code, the commission now objects to representation by the Office of the Attorney General on all future matters due to the Office of the Attorney General's conflict of interest with the commission. And number 4, directing commission special assistant attorneys general to not provide exempt attorney work product to the Office of the Attorney General when permissible under the existing SAG agreements. And so that's my, call it a report or a memorandum to the commission with my recommendations and observations, and I'll try to answer any questions that you may have. That's a very short comment for a lot of hours that went into preparing this report. Done. But I'll try to answer any questions that you may have. It may take you a while to just to go through the memorandum and go through all of the supporting documents, because whenever I made a statement in here, I tried to document it and support it with an actual document. So I'm not editing. I tried to avoid any editorial comment.
And I want to mention that I have been involved